Hello and welcome to Comfort Dad Cooks. On today's show we'll be making pizza dough and then I'll be showing you how I make pizza. Okay, what we'd like to do is start here with a mixing bowl and we'll zero out the scale. And then we're going to start with 600 grams, which is about £1.25 of flour, wheat flour. Now I use an organic heritage strong flour. If you haven't got organic flour, that's okay, but try not to use pastry flour. Try to use bread or pizza flour or another strong flour that's got enough gluten in it to actually allow the development of a chewy, crispy crust. So we're going to put 600 grams of that into our scale here. It's worth measuring. Don't wing it. 600 grams of flour. If you get 601, it's fine. We're not building a piano, as I've said. Now what we want to do to that is add 64% of water. So if you have to use 600 grams of flour, that would mean 384 grams of water at about body temperature. So the way that I would do that is I would put a container on here and then I would add 250 grams here, about that, and then measure the temperature I've got here. So it's at 123 degrees. So what I want to do is add some cold water here. And I'm hitting just about body temperature there. Now then what I want to do is add, you want about 2 grams of yeast. It's about 1/3 of a sachet of yeast. Now unless you have an extremely precise scale, you'll just hit 2-ish grams of yeast. There we go. Now it's just instant dried yeast. And what we're going to do here is we're going to just dissolve that yeast here for a couple of moments. Let that reconstitute. Okay. So we're going to then add a tablespoon or about 15 grams of salt to the mixture here, to the flour. 15 grams. Okay, so we've got 15 grams of salt to our 600 grams of flour, and then we're going to add the 384 grams of yeast and water, lukewarm water. If you don't have a thermometer, you can feel it as to be about the same temperature you'd put a baby in for a bath. I suppose would be one way of ascertaining it. Now we're going to put this on the first mixing speed and just mix it just so that everything comes together. You don't want to develop the gluten very much. Now what you'll find as you're mixing this is that sometimes the flour starts to clump up. And that's okay, simply just mix it back and then put it back in the mixer. What you're trying to do here is to just incorporate the ingredients. You're not at this stage trying in any way to develop the gluten really, just mix it together. Now depending on the climate in which you live and depending on the humidity, you might find you need to add a little bit less water or a little bit more, or just add a bit more flour. Try not to add too much flour or too much water. This 64-65% percentage of water to the weight of flour is about where you want to hit. Okay, that was just a couple of minutes. If you try and overdevelop the gluten at this point in the flour, as you would if you were making bread, what you'll find is that you end up with less of a soft pizza dough. It's more like a piece of bread rather than a pizza dough, which is what we're trying to develop here. So we get the dough hook cleaned a little bit here. And put that to the side. And then I'll just show you what we're looking for at this point. Put a little bit of flour down and then tip the dough out. Now the dough should be tacky, and it's okay if it sticks to your hand. Please do not add an excessive amount of flour at this stage to try and stop it being quite so tacky. What we're going to do is bring that a little bit together. This is just a plastic bench scraper, and we are going to just work that a little bit just to bring any sticky edges together. A few moments. Now we're going to put that back inside the mixing bowl here and put a lid on it, and then we are going to leave that for a couple of hours in a warm place. This is the initial rising that we're going to allow for this pizza dough, and we're doing the type of pizza that you might get in New York. What is a British guy in Oregon doing a New York pizza dough for? But this is the way I've learned to do it over the years, and we're going to let this rise here for a couple of hours, and then we'll be back to show you the next steps. Okay, so welcome back. We've got our dough here. It's been rising for a couple of hours. We're just going to take that out and see how it looks. A little bit of gluten development going on, but not very much. We're just starting this rising of the dough for a couple of hours. As I said, we're not looking for double in size or anything. It's what we're going to do here is quite simply I use a plastic container here, and we're going to put that in there and leave it in the refrigerator for about, depends when you want pizza. If you want to make pizza today, what I would do is I would take this, which is about 1 kilogram, and I would divide it into 4 equal sized balls, dough balls, and I would rest them on a baking tray with a cover over for about 3 or 4 hours, and then from those individual dough balls make your pizzas. In the next episode, I'm releasing these 2 episodes at the same time, so you'll learn how to make pizza dough and also how I make pizza. But this weighs about 1 kilo, and the way I do this is to now put this in the fridge for a couple of days, 2 to 3 days. I have forgotten about it and made great pizza after 5 days, but for a fantastic pizza base, I'm going to put this in the refrigerator sealed for about 2 to 3 days. Now what will happen there is that the yeast will be what we call in baking terminology retarded. You're retarding the yeast. It doesn't stop it fermenting the bread. It doesn't the dough. We use retarding also in bread production, which is why I said bread there. What will happen is that the gluten will start to very slowly develop inside of the dough. You will not get a lot of CO2 gas produced, but you will get gluten development occurring within the dough. Now, the great thing about this is you can always have pizza dough available. You can just go to the fridge, and as I'll show you in the next video exactly how I make pizza, you can come in from work in the evening and start pizza pretty much after a little resting period of the dough. So it's something that I always have in my freezer available all the time. And then, you know, if we want pizza for a lunch or we want to do some flatbreads, there's so many different styles of pizza. And not just pizza, but also there I mentioned flatbread. So many variations you can do. So from my perspective, that's it for production of pizza dough. We're going to rest this for 2 or 3 days, and in the next session we'll come back, we'll see exactly what we do. As I said, if you want to do this pizza today, I would skip the fridge part, although you won't get the same gluten development and it'll be a different pizza base, and immediately go into dividing this into 4 dough balls. Now what you would simply do is just hop to the next video I'm doing, which is about how I produce pizza, and you'll see how we go from there. So thank you for joining me today on Comfort Dad Cooks, and we'll be back soon about how to make pizza.